Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Luis Garcia, president and co-founder of Pete. Luis, welcome to the show.
Good. Thank you for having me, Ben.
Yeah, great to have you here. So let's dive right in. Tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about your background.
Well, I am an engineer, a software engineer by training and education. I was a programmer since I was 9 years old, which today is not as a surprise. I mean, a lot of kids start programming very early, but in the 80s, it was very different thing to be. And also, I grew up in Venezuela, South America, so even more in a South American country. And early in my career, I was a software engineer in the early .com, and also move up to be into product executive positions, and then kind of got by accident into education. And I was hired by Full Sail University in the early 2000s. They were a very well established media and entertainment university, but I wanted to have an online presence for education as well, and which back then was still very early, even though there were some large players in online education, but it was still very early. So for some reason, they thought that I could do that, and they hired me to create the online university for them. And so I did. I joined them, and a few years later, we launched an online university for Full Sail, and it became in a few years the fastest growing online university in the country. And by the time we were at peak growth, we had launched over 35 degree programs. I had over 1,000 employees, and we went from 0 to 12,000 degree seeking students, which was, generating over $180 million in revenue for the university annual.
Wow. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's and that would have been a unicorn on its own if it would have been spinned off. But what it did is it taught me a lot of the challenges in around digital education, in which has been a tremendous impact in the world of learning in regards to getting the education to more people. But it also brought its own bag of tricks and challenges that didn't exist before. Two in particular have been nagging me for a while, and takes me for where I am today. One is education materials. If you have been in a classroom being taught by an expert that is also a good communicator and a good person to engage with, it doesn't really matter what's behind that educator, and you feel the educator. You feel that you're learning, and so the training materials themselves didn't have to do a lot. But when you remove the structure from the equation, and when you break the real time education into being offline on your, especially if it's on your own pace, then those training materials do all the training. They are doing the education, and generating education materials is actually really hard. And so back then I solved that problem by hiring a whole department of people that could do video and audio animations and putting presentations together, and so, but it is very expensive to do it well.
Yeah. Yeah. So
You know,
interesting. So yeah,
uh,
so software engineering by trade, accidental education. I know I've got my own academy where I teach SaaS metrics online, and creating educational materials is a ton of work. So yeah.
it is
Yeah.
a ton of work. I'm so
It's
glad that you can relate to it.
oh yeah, it's a
And
tough. Yeah.
the second problem that has been nagging me is the problem of evaluation of learning. So how do you know the learner learned? Most education is what we call is the time you spend in education is fixed, but the learning is variable. And which it seems kind of upside down. It should be whether you spend a week in a course or 2 years in a course, and should be variable, but should not be variable is the amount of learning that you do. You should be able to master the material until you pass to the next course or whatever it is. And so that idea of effectively evaluating learning is also really hard. In the traditional classroom, somebody invented at some point tests, and tests are really efficient for the instructor, but really terrible at measuring learning. And when it went online, that wasn't really fixed. Actually, it got worse because it can be automated. And so it doesn't really tackle the problem of evaluation of learning. The best way of evaluating learning is to go through a deep process of one-on-one engagement with the expert, where the expert can ask questions and ask deeper questions and ask deeper questions, and until you get to whether the learner actually grasps the material. That's not really scalable in any setting. And
Yeah.
and if you have two students, then it's scalable. But if you got the moment you get to 20, you can't spend hours and hours with each learner to really measure their learning.
Yeah, then more like a services business. So that's a perfect transition. So yeah, let's talk about your current
Yeah.
company, Pete. Tell us what products and their services Pete offers.
Correct. So 2 years ago, I left the university to start companies, and a year or so ago, I partnered with my partner Jacques Pu, who is a co-founder of the only unicorn in Orlando, and so he exited that company. He had the same problem within his company because they grew really, really fast. So he said, well, and they acquired companies, so they needed to integrate them. So he thought, well, I'll start an academy, and then the way he said is, I thought it was a few hundred hours, ended up being thousands of hours in cost and hiring instructional designers and all that kind of stuff. So we come together in conversations, and he said, "Do you think we can use generative AI to solve that problem?" It was specifically more the problem of content generation for training materials, and I'm like, yes. Absolutely, we can use generative AI to create content and basically automating the process of instructional design, which is the process in which you translate expertise into a learning experience. Okay, so that process, which is what it takes a lot of work. But I also told them I want to also solve the other problem, which is a lot more elusive, and I absolutely think that we can use AI for, which is let's create one-on-one engagement for evaluation of learning at scale. And so those are the two things that we focus. And our software is for workforce learning. So our target is companies in the hundreds of employees. Usually, and at this size, they start getting into the problems of not having a learning experience for their employees, especially if they have velocity of any kind, velocity of hiring or velocity of product. But they're not going to invest in hiring a whole department of people. They don't have that size. If you're really small, shadowing and teaching each other, that solves the problem. But if you're in the hundreds of employees, you're kind of in a difficult middle, because shadowing is not going to work. It's not scale. And you're not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in a department to create your training programs. So that's where our solution becomes that.
So are you creating the content for them? Do they come to you with the content? If there are hundreds of employees, so can you walk us through a little example?
Yeah, absolutely.
500, employee company, they come to you like, hey, we need to level up our training program. What comes
Right.
next?
So I'll give you an example. For instance, Orlando City Soccer is the local Major League Soccer team.
Yeah.
And their organization is actually not that big. It's 50, 60 people working in a team, but they own the venue where they play. But on game day, they welcome 200 people to help them, guide the fans and all those. And that's a team that has velocity of change, right? They have to learn a lot of details in a very short amount of time. In many cases, they get to the job and they haven't been trained. And there's not really an effective way to do it in person, and because through the season it also changes. So they came to us, and our software made it possible for them to create digital courses just for that audience, for those game day personnel. And so they have their processes already documented in their case. They have the process manuals of what to do, what not to do, security and safety and all that. So we took all that and we ingested it into our platform, and then turned them into courses. So two particular things that we do. First, we use the content that already exists. In the past, they were given one of those manuals to those employees, marked them in the list that they got the thing, and hopefully they read it, let alone understood it. And so turning them into a course and help them with that. But we also use the voice of the expert. Learning is very, very important to be multimodal. So not only reading, but also listening and seeing. And so we clone the voice of the department head or the CEO or whoever wants to be the expert that will communicate. And then when we create the courses, it automatically creates the narration of the courses with it in the voice of the expert. So with that, and then we get what we call the simulation engine, where then we get to do that evaluation of learning at scale. In this particular case, they want to learn how to guide a fan through the stadium to find the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And so they will come into our engine, and the engine will be acting as the customer, as the fan, and say, hey, where can I find the bathroom? And then they gotta walk them through the steps to make sure there's a particular distance, that they're giving landmarks, that they're reassuring the fan that they're gonna find what they were looking for. So they get to practice those scenarios. Down to, I lost my child, which triggered a bunch of scenarios that they also have to learn how to manage. And so this example uses both of what we do.
And so when you onboard, say this example, do you charge any sort of initial onboarding fee? And then is it just a subscription for access for their employees and contractors or freelancers to come in and continually access the content?
Yeah, so great question. And I didn't answer it before. Though, so what we found is that in order for you to get great outputs, you have to have great inputs. And like everything in AI is about input and refinement. And so you get the right input and then do the right refinement. In our case, you gotta train the AI so you get the outputs that you want. And that usually happens in the first of 2 or 3 courses that you create. And if you don't do it right, then the outcome will not be great. So what we do is when you sign a contract with us, it's an annual contract that is paid monthly. So it's like a SaaS model. But we do co-create with the customer the first 3 courses to make sure that not only that the customer is trained on how to use the tool moving forward, but we also make sure that the AI is properly trained so that when they are on their own, they have the best output possible. We'll continue to support them throughout. The support is included in our contract, but the co-creation is part of the first 2 or 3 courses.
Okay. That makes a ton of sense because and teaching courses online myself, I know it's hard for these companies to have, the resources, the dedicated folks and budget to spin up these educational programs. So it makes a ton of sense. So let's talk a few stats and figures. So what year, so you founded 2 years ago, so founded 2022?
Actually, we were founded in 2024. I'm sorry, 23. We are a year and so.
Okay. All right.
Summer
So
of
just
23 we were founded. Yeah.
Okay. So still pretty new here. And then do you have a company headquarters location?
Yeah, we're in Orlando, Florida, the happiest place on earth, and the headquarters in downtown Orlando.
Okay, perfect. So founded 2023 in Orlando. And what's your current team size?
About 18 people.
Okay. 18. And is that like, of that staff, is it like heavily still engineering focused then as you build out the company, or?
We had a good mix, and I'm a little spoiled because my co-founder is the CTO, so he still not only has the experience of having gone through a successful startup, but he also writes a lot of code. And so we have like 4 or 5 folks in there. And then it's pretty evenly distributed between product, marketing, customer success, and sales.
Okay. And then I assume, are you at this point, are you revenue generating or pre-revenue?
We were generating revenue since day one, man.
Oh, day one. Oh, that's great. So
yeah, we started the company with 1 customer and command line, but we delivered.
All right.
So we're being involved in the product as we go along. And yes, we have 16 customers right now. I think we'll probably get to 20 by the end of this year.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So revenue generating day one is awesome. And tell us, so obviously seems like a big target market here, a couple hundred employees and above. So tell me, how are you finding your prospects?
So like any startup at the beginning of the journey was very founder sales. And we have a pretty tight technology ecosystem here in Orlando, like I'm sure it is also in Denver. And so companies want to support each other. So the majority of our customers came from our networks and here in Orlando. So we have, Orlando City Soccer, and we have Addition Financial, which is the largest credit union here. And we got the stadium for the Magic. So we have a lot of customers here. So that's where our sales came from. But the past 3 or 4 months, we've been making heavy investments into our digital marketing. And right now, most of our customers are coming from those efforts.
Okay. So as usual, founder-led sales to start with, now investing in digital marketing. And then let's switch over to the fundraising side. How much capital have you raised to date?
We raised a close round earlier this year of 2.2 million.
Okay. It looks like, and that was like about 2.2 million. I think it was called a pre-seed round or seed round. Seed round. Yeah. Seed round. So 2.2 million seed round. So tell us, you're just over a year in raising 2.2. So what led you to raise that capital? Were there milestones or triggers that led you to that fundraise?
Yeah, I mean, there was an initial cash infusion from my co-founder and his two partners that also exited that unicorn. And so the three of them became the initial investors. And with that, they got me and they got a bunch of other key people. And then we were raising money from day one. I mean, going to the local funds here in Orlando, going through the syndicates and angels of the area. We knew most of them. And anyway, so getting to be in front of them to pitch the company wasn't hard. And getting them to commit, it's always, has these nuances. But the team is really, I think, but the team and ideas, what you invest that early. And so bringing a long time education executive like myself and a technical co-founder with a $1 billion exit really helped the pitch. And then the idea of solving this particular problem, which anybody that has grown an organization beyond 100 people know that exists, but it's a problem that most organizations just basically live with. And until they're big enough to have that training department, was the nuance to explain to people. And because sometimes they, especially angels, maybe they're angels because they make their money coming from a large corporation. So for them, that probably never existed, so to speak. And others, probably they make their money because they exited the company very early, so they never experienced the problem either. So that was kind of the difficult part in the pitch. But for those that understood it, they went after it very, very
Okay.
easy.
In that 2 million or 2.2 seed round, any lessons learned that you'd like to pass on to the founder community who may be, just out of the gate developing a product, thinking about a seed round?
Yeah, I think it depends where you are, but I always think that you should just try local first.
Hmm.
We really wanted all our seed round to come from the Orlando area. We end up not having the large institutional investor came from North Carolina, still Southeast, but that was half, but the other half was local investors. So we were successful in raising a significant amount of the round locally, and from angels. And so I would say they always start there. And there are people in your community that have funds available for them to invest in their community. And they want to believe that their community can produce these companies that are going to generate a lot of jobs and prestige to the company. So I would say start there. And always, it's not going to be easy. This year was very hard to raise money. The last couple of years have been really hard to raise money. So we consider ourselves very fortunate. And that's why you have to eliminate some of the friction, and by going with people that will know you.
Yeah, I like that. I like that because it's like buy local first, but now it's like try your local investors first. So that was kind of the first I've heard
And
that,
we
which
have
makes
both.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we have both. Our first customers were all local, and the first investors were all local.
Yeah, that's great. And Luis, at this stage of your
Hmm.
business, about a year and a half in, going up to 20 customers, do you have a favorite number or metric that you're focused on to guide the business?
Well, AR. I mean, AR becomes the ultimate metric because you got to show traction. You either show traction so you become profitable and you don't need more money, or you need traction in order to raise money so that you can become profitable later. So either way, it doesn't happen without sales. So you have to. That's the metric that I focus a lot. Obviously, to get to ARR, there's a lot of things that have to happen. So you have to generate leads, and you have to have activities, and you got to connect, and you got a pipeline that you're moving things around. But ultimately, we are measured on the growth of ARR.
Yeah, but that's always a popular answer. So ARR always at the top of the list. Of course, there are a ton of SaaS metrics out there, but ARR definitely is probably, yeah, always like 60, 70% of the popular votes. So as we wrap up here, Luis, I'm curious, like what's next for Pete, but also where do you think online education is going, with what you're doing? Is this changing the traditional, of course we have universities and public institutions, but thinking about corporate education, tell us kind of what's coming up next for Pete, and then, how do you think education is going to evolve?
Yeah. In regards to us, this is a very critical time in a startup. You raise your seed fund, you have to, you know, build that airplane where you're falling down, down the cliff, right? And so our focus is very much in growth while not running out of money. So we manage very well. We're very effective. And so the investments that we have made in creating demand and in the product are paying off. So all the indicators are pointing in the right direction. So we expect a very busy first half of the year in onboarding a lot of customers. And hopefully with that will be enough to go back to the market and raise a Series A and continue that growth. So that's what's next for us. Continue to capture new customers is then our number one priority. And in regards to digital education, online education, I've been in it for over 20 years, and we've been talking about transformation of education for a very long time. And there has been a lot of progress beyond digitizing things. But I truly feel that AI is the technology that is here to make a real inflection point, make it possible for an inflection point in learning to take place. Now, what that means is not more learners. We can get more learners. Everybody's taking online courses, and everyone is learning online. It's making sure that that learning is effective. That has been kind of the very elusive goal that we have. Whether you are watching a video on YouTube to teach yourself how to, fix an AC, or you taking a very complicated course on a degree program or anything like that, the advantages that AI can give you to make sure you actually learn were not possible before, and I think they're going to be possible now.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that changes. I mean, things are moving so fast with AI, so appreciate that insight. So, Luis, really appreciate your time sharing your experience and your journey today. If listeners would like to learn more about Pete, where should we send them online?
So we have the best domain in the world. It's pete.com, and that is pete.com/podcast. And then you go there, we'll give you all the information you need to know. And if you're interested, just fill out the form and we'll call you right back.
Oh, perfect. And I don't know how you got that domain. I'm guessing there was a price tag to that. Unless you registered that like 30 years ago. But pete.com, that's perfect. So simple. And again, Luis, really appreciate your time, sharing your experience, and then look forward to seeing how education evolves at Pete.
Thank you so much, man.